Okay, I want to start with clarification of functions for you. So I want to start very, very basic, make it clear what punctuation marks you're using, what kind of syntax you need to use when you write a function, when you call a function, and to clear up some questions you might have about differences that you might see in Code Academy versus the code that you might see in your textbook or really anywhere. So I'm going to write this code in JS Fiddle because now that you're familiar with it and it's so interactive, what we're looking at right now is a bit of code that I totally stole from Code Academy. And I wanted to start by saying that console log makes no sense in JS Fiddle. It won't work. Why? Because JS Fiddle is not the console. Remember, the console is what we get when we go into developer and we open the console, and then we can, write some things down here. And you'll see that if the console is open, what I wrote here in JS Fiddle has actually appeared in my console. But normal users, like everybody online, on their phone, they're never going to have the console, right? So console log is only for playing in the console or checking your code in the console, not for real web pages, not for JS Fiddle. So what can we do in JS Fiddle to make this work? Well, we could make it an alert since all it's doing is typing some text, right? And how would we make this run in JS Fiddle? Well, because we're in JS Fiddle, we would say run. And then an alert would pop up, and you're familiar with those now, right? Now, first thing to understand is that if the function has not been called, and I'm going to erase this line 5 here and then run it again, and we'll see what happens, because it's in line 5 with hello, parenthesis, parenthesis, semicolon. That is where the function is called, meaning it makes it run. So if I get rid of that and I hit run, where's my alert? I swear I am clicking run right now, nothing happens. So this is the importance of making sure you have called your function. Oops. With that, it will run, and without that, it will not. Okay. So the other thing that I want to make clear to you is that this is an acceptable way of writing a function, the way that most or all of the functions are written in Code Academy, but there is another way to write a function, and these are described and defined in your Robbins book, right? Each style has a name, but I'm just going to be clear about, well, how can we write a function? So instead of the whole var equals part, the way I usually write a function and the way they are usually written in most of the code that I see for JavaScript is like this, okay? So the difference is we start with the keyword function. Then we give the function a name. In this case, the name is hello. Then we've got a pair of parentheses after the name of the function. And after the parentheses, we have the curly braces. Okay, so whether we had anything in the middle or not, this is the function. And in fact, the semicolon seems to be completely unnecessary after the curly braces. So I usually do not use it. So what is a function for? What does a function do? A function can do anything, any of the things that you have learned to do. You can declare new variables, you can give them values, you can have if-else statements, you can make arrays, you can manipulate arrays, you can do all kinds of things in between the curly braces that define the instructions that are named this function. Okay, so the function has a name, and what that name represents is a set of instructions that will run if you call the function, calling it by its name, using its name. Okay, so this is the simplest version of a function, and we might even put in here something that you've seen before. So I am going to copy and paste Let's see, so I've got a prompt, and then I'm gonna catch the answer whether somebody clicks OK or cancel. And then if they clicked OK, I'm going to say one thing. And if they clicked cancel, I'm going to say something else. So let's run that. All right, so I'll type my actual name. And it asks me if that is my name, so I say OK. And it answers the end, right? If I run it again, this time I will type in my cat's name. I will say cancel, not OK, because it's not my name, and I get a different message. All right, so all those things happen because they're wrapped in the function, and the function was called. If I get rid of the call, if the function is not called, and I try to run this, none of it happens. So your first important lesson is, if you never call the function never runs. To say it another way, you must call the function or else none of the things in it will happen. One other important thing about functions, and that is because it is absolutely vital that the function instructions begin with an opening curly brace and they end with a closing curly brace. And you will often have other things inside that also use the curly braces. It is really important that you indent and space very consistently and very carefully, because I've seen a lot of students kind of carelessly indenting, sometimes a lot of spaces, sometimes a few, and it's going to be impossible for you to write your code correctly if you are careless with your indentation or any of the symbols that are necessary to the code. So one last review of how the function itself is constructed, right? Before we are able to call it, we have to write the function with its curly braces, with all its instructions. And I am going to show you two versions. The top version, the one called a declaration, I find that extremely preferable, extremely easier to use. And the second kind, called an expression, you will see this used in Codecademy, and I just think that it's harder to understand. It's harder to get the punctuation right. It's harder to remember how to do it correctly. So I would say just try to forget that for most of your work in this class and use this more straightforward, simple style of how to write a function. And then, of course, if you wanted to call this function, you would have to type its exact name and its parentheses and a semicolon at the end, because this is a statement, this is an instruction. In order to run, it needs to have a semicolon at the end. So we have a few more things to learn about functions. So yes, there are some more videos. They're coming up next.